Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joe Papano from FiberLink Communications. Thanks for joining us today. It's obviously an important day for all of us in the mobility industry. I think we all know, what's happened in the past week or two, right? Apple announcing iOS 5, iPhone 4S, and of course yesterday Apple making iOS 5 available via iTunes. And so obviously it's important to us, we know it's important to you, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to give you some useful information about how to make the best use of iOS 5 in your enterprise. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I've got Chris Corbet from our product management team here with me today. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Joe. Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining, Chris. And what we're going to do is kind of follow the usual format. We've got about 30 minutes of material we'll present. We'll do some Q&A to the best of our ability at the end of that. And, if you've got questions, send them in via the chat panel or the Q&A panel. And Chris and I and others will do our best to answer for you. A couple of other things along the way here. We'll do some polling questions. So we'll ask you to, participate and provide a little feedback to us. And hopefully, we'll all learn something together there. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Chris, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. As Joe said, we're really excited about the opportunity to provide this webinar. We really appreciate everyone out there on the line today taking some time out of their day to listen about some of the exciting announcements that Apple has made recently with the release of their newest operating system version, iOS 5, for their mobile devices. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over some of the key iOS 5 features and talk about really how they impact your business. We'll talk a little bit about some of the management capabilities that are going to be made available for organizations like yourselves utilizing a mobile device management solution like FiberLink's MAS 360 product.
Hey, Chris, we're going to run our first poll here.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to open that up right now. And folks, what we want to know is pretty simple. Are there any iOS 5 devices currently hitting your enterprise environment? Email, WLAN, VPN?
It's a crazy question that we're asking, actually, literally hours from the release. But I've talked to a few customers since then who are already kind of undergoing the onslaught of these devices, and it's certainly picking up steam. And throughout the next few webinars, we'll certainly provide some statistics around that.
Well, I think certainly the response was overwhelming, right? Even technically overwhelming, I guess some people would say yesterday. So it's obviously popular, and I'm going to share the results with you folks right now. No big surprise here. Most people on the webinar, and there's quite a few of you, so thanks for that, are already sure that there's iOS 5 devices hitting their environment. So therefore, it's important that you be informed and know how to protect yourself.
It's very interesting, and we're excited to talk about it today. In our platform, we've actually seen iOS 5 devices since Apple released its first beta of the operating system, and it's been interesting to kind of watch that number trickle up over time, and certainly the past few hours have been a major push. I did want to touch real quick on one thing here. So iOS 5 is a big topic. We're going to go through the basics today. We're going to provide a foundation and intro into iOS 5 and the enterprise. However, there are a couple different areas that we believe require a little more technical deep dive, if you will, to make sure that our attendees have the utmost understanding of capabilities of the operating system and mobile device management platform. So on October 27th, we're actually going to do another meeting, another webinar, where we get into a more technical deep dive on profile management. We'll do a demo of the MAS 360 platform at that time. Then, not too far after that, we'll do another technical deep dive, this time into application management, some really cool functionality going on there with another demo. And we do want to extend an offer that there will be a drawing after that November 10th webinar. And if you've attended all three of our iOS 5 webinars, you will automatically be entered into that drawing, and the winner will receive a brand new iPhone 4S. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the the meat of the presentation here and talk about what iOS 5 actually is. As you know, it was released yesterday. It is the next major version of iOS. It will be supported on the iPhone 3GS and above, all third-generation iPod Touches and above, and all of the iPads that you have in your environment. There are over 200-plus new features in iOS 5. Lots of them minor, but there's definitely a handful of major features that will provide, some thoughts for enterprise IT and security departments, as well as, a lot of new functionality that end users will want to take advantage of. And it no longer requires a computer for certain things like activation, upgrades, and backups over Wi-Fi. Really, really neat stuff to think about in terms of kind of detethering ourselves from the PC world as we go fully into the mobile device. So what do we think about the impact on you, on your environment? So I mentioned earlier, we are tracking the spread of iOS 5 devices in our MAS 360, cloud-based mobile device management infrastructure. And we will share those statistics with you in terms of uptick on our upcoming iOS 5 webinars. I think you'll find it very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how it aligns with what you're seeing at your organization. We think your environment will see these quick upgrades. We're already seeing it today. The poll indicated that's the case. We also think a lot of new iPhone 4S's will be coming in over the next couple months. We know how lines tend to form around a corner at Apple stores when they release a new piece of hardware. We think your users will immediately use and benefit from some of the sync capabilities for documents and data between their iOS devices. I know, I'm quite excited about the fact that I can sync from PC to iPhone to iPad already, and it's quite a productivity gainer. We think your users are also going to appreciate some of the over-the-air OS updates. No longer do I have to tether my device after this upgrade, of course, to a PC to stay on top of the latest and greatest. The IT team obviously is going to save some time with wireless setup that won't necessarily require that PC or Mac with iTunes anymore. No longer need to push iTunes out to all your devices and keep that updated. We think your IT team will have a lot of increased app control to coincide with some of the explosions that we're seeing in the app marketplace. On the security side, some really interesting stuff happening there too. So I think the security team is going to appreciate some of the improvements, especially around email security and sandboxing. But we also think the security team will want to be sure that iCloud is well understood in terms of its impact to the business and managed appropriately. So security teams are going to be paying very close attention to that. We also think security teams will probably be studying the impact on the iMessage functionality. We'll touch on all of this and any kind of message retention requirements that you might see. So the key features, I touched on a few of them. Here's just a quick summary slide. We will go into depth on all of these over the upcoming few slides, but iCloud, that's probably the one we've heard about for the longest time leading up to this release. A lot of really neat functionality there around automatic backup and storing and syncing of music, photos, docs across all of your devices. iMessage, another really neat piece of functionality, which is kind of SMS-like, which will only use your data plan. And it'll choose between, a native message and SMS, and you'll see that here in a minute. My favorite, obviously, as you probably could allude to earlier, is the fact that it's PC-free. So no longer do I need that, that cord to tether for upgrades, for backups, for activation and sync. And then the other key feature, obviously, is the new MDM enhancements, which MAS 360 already has in place and our customers can take advantage of for managing iOS 5 devices and some of the new functionality.
Okay, so we're going to Chris has introduced kind of the four big buckets of functionality that are new with iOS 5, and we're going to get into some more depth on each one in a couple minutes here. Next polling question is really pretty simple. Tell us which features you think are most exciting to your users and your corporation. All right. Well, while we do that, let's jump into the next slide on iCloud, and then we'll discuss results. So, iCloud's a really interesting piece of functionality. There's a lot of different things that'll be accomplished based on the iCloud functionality. Syncing core iOS apps, mobile me mail, context calendars.
photo stream as well. For document sync, it's just going to be the apps that use iCloud. So that today is really only kind of the iWorks app, but a lot of the other app developers are out there, doing that development and getting their apps. So you'll see a ton of updates in the near future. A couple different things to note. Backups will only happen over Wi-Fi automatically, so you don't have to worry about your data plans. And docs and data sync can be turned off, on the device itself and via MAS 360 management that we'll talk about here in a little bit. And iCloud does also include a Find My iPhone, iPad, or Mac feature. So, you can see that in the picture there. That would be kind of what you would be used to in Mobile Me. Has been ported over to the iCloud service itself. So you want to talk about the results here. It looks like, wow, all right, most people agree with me that the PC-free aspect is the most interesting, with iCloud not too far behind. I would say I am on, despite being an MDM vendor, I'm on board with our audience that those are my two favorite features in terms of their impact on, me as an end user specifically. So let's talk about the enterprise features for iCloud. So significant productivity benefits being the fact that your data is always going to be available wherever you are. It's also available for third-party app developers, which is pretty neat if you think about it. So, if you're going to be developing apps for the enterprise, you can leverage some of those iCloud controls. By default, it's important to note that it will sync data within a single iTunes account. That can be, of something you might want to take into consideration, right? So, you and your family members share one account, which is somewhat typical. It's the way my household is set up. All docs would be available on all devices. So that could be something you might not want to occur. There is actually a workaround available for individual iCloud accounts to be used for sync, as opposed to, the shared iTunes account, which you would use for purchases of music and whatnot. And actually, if you go to our Master Center, we're in the process of updating some forum posts there that will actually talk through how to go ahead and enable that functionality with screenshots. So I think that might be something that you might want to educate your end users on. The other piece to note is there is mobile device management control available for iCloud. So in MAS 360, as of the launch of iOS 5, you can actually control which features of iCloud can be used among approved devices. You can see some of the policy options there on my screenshot, where you can actually turn off cloud backup, you can turn off document sync, you can turn off key value sync, and you can turn off photo stream sync as well. So you have the capabilities of kind of setting up, your policy from an enterprise standpoint today based on your comfort level, and then obviously tweaking it for groups or individual users going forward if you'd like.
And folks, we've got that support today in our portal, right? So
yep.
Everybody's kind of, every vendor in the space is talking about iOS 5 support and when they're going to have it. We've got it right now. If you're a customer, you woke up this morning and had it and didn't have to lift a finger.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits, obviously, of being in the cloud and delivering a SaaS platform, is we can provide those updates overnight so that you're prepared to handle big changes in the mobile enterprise and the mobile computing space, as opposed to having to go through kind of bulky upgrades or change management processes inside your data center. The next thing I want to talk about, we won't spend a ton of time here, but I do want to mention iMessage specifically. It is very similar to SMS. You can send text and pictures and video, but it's pretty cool in the sense that you can actually send to a phone number or Apple ID, and it'll automatically pick between, using SMS or iMessage. You can actually see the differences in color of the messages there on the right in terms of what your user experience would be. Everything is encrypted in transit. There are delivery and read receipts, typing indicators. It will work on all iOS 5 devices. Obviously, one thing the security team in highly regulated industries that have to deal with message retention requirements, that's something you guys might want to look into in terms of utilizing iMessage in your environment. Let's talk about cutting the cord, going PC-free. So, many of you on the line and us in the room here have probably cut our teeth quite a few times on our iOS 4 devices being heavily reliant on iTunes. That means I need a PC with iTunes installed, or a Mac, obviously, with iTunes installed, to actually activate the device. Quite cumbersome if I'm an IT department trying to roll out hundreds of different iOS devices to my end users. Quite cumbersome if I'm the father of a family trying to set up a device for my son or daughter. In same kind of concept there. So one of the things that was also a pain was you had to make sure that iTunes was always up to date and on all the computers in your organization. And that could be bulky, large updates utilizing software distribution and content distribution networks and bandwidth and things of that nature. Now with iOS 5, over-the-air is going to be supported for activation. Really great functionality there to streamline that process for your enterprise. For software upgrades, that's probably one of the most important and beneficial aspects of iOS 5 is the fact that end users are going to be able to more easily upgrade to the latest and greatest versions of the iOS operating system, which will then limit the time in between kind of the lag for upgrade. And maybe there's a critical flaw fixed or something like that. So I think we're all going to be quite excited about that. Backup and restore and sharing of documents and data as well, all over the air.
Hey, one thing, Chris, I was meeting with some customers and some other folks educating themselves about the MDM yesterday, and anything over the air is kind of almost the number one use case for IT folks. They want to be able to manage these devices over the air, not need a cord, and certainly not need to have them in the hands of an IT person to manage. So, I mean, this really is kind of a huge benefit for IT folks as well as end users.
Particularly activation. That was always kind of the biggest headache that our customers would talk about when adopting iOS as a device choice in their enterprise environment, was just kind of talking through activation. Is it the IT's responsibility? Is it end user responsibility? How does that all work? So I think that'll definitely be a big, big time saver. The other really neat aspect is it's going to expand the use of these devices. So, I'm not going to say it's going to completely replace laptops or PCs, but that's really, the PC will just become another device, right? It's not really a requirement to use an iPad anymore. So if you want to use iPads potentially to replace PCs, maybe you're in the education industry or something like that, you have that option now, quite frankly, because everything can be done over the air. So let's talk about some of the policy management enhancements with iOS 5. So these are really specific to mobile device management vendors like ourselves in our Mass 360 product line. We talked about some of the iCloud controls on a previous slide where we could allow or restrict backup, dock sync, photo stream, and key value sync. One of the other really neat pieces of functionality is around email sandboxing. So one of the things that we can do is actually prevent end users from being able to move mail from their enterprise or corporate email account to maybe a personal email account that's on the device as well. So this is what this is going to do. It's going to allow you to take advantage of the native email and sandboxing functionality of iOS, and kind of get that same containerized look and feel, if you will, without having to go through any changes in user experience. The other thing that you probably are aware of is there's a lot of apps out there that actually have some integrated development work into the iOS framework that allow you to send emails directly from the app. I mean, the most common is probably your photo viewer on iOS, where if you take a picture, you can simply move the picture to an email and send it. You can actually restrict that functionality from allowing third-party apps to utilize the corporate email to send email. So that's a pretty neat piece of functionality as well. The other thing that was added was support for Wi-Fi proxy settings. So this is pretty straightforward, but certainly will positively impact a lot of businesses out there. And the final thing on this slide here I want to touch on are some new voice and data roaming controls. So you're actually able now to enable or disable roaming centrally in Mass 360. So whether or not the device is allowed to do voice or data roaming. Obviously, it is important to note that the user can change this setting. However, we are able to report on the status. So those of you familiar with Mass 360, with the concept of a watch list and whatnot, so you can kind of monitor for any of those devices where the end user has overridden corporate IT policy around data and voice roaming controls. And obviously I don't want to tease too much for future webinars, but we got a lot of great stuff in the docket roadmap-wise in terms of context-aware and creating some of these policies. All right, one of my favorite things as part of iOS 5 is some of the app management enhancements that have been kind of brought into the fold here. So I think these first two major bullet points are really cool in the sense that when you distribute an app via mobile device management, so via MAS 360's application catalog that you're familiar with from previous webinars, that app will automatically become quote-unquote managed, okay? The really neat thing there is once an app's managed, we can allow or prevent that app from backing up to iTunes or to iCloud. You can delete that app and any associated app data on demand from our console. You can remove that app during a selective wipe of the device. So, that's the classic employee-owned device workflow where, said employee potentially, leaves the organization and you remove corporate email, calendar, contacts, etc. You can also remove those pushed apps there as well. The other neat thing is that MDM profile that's installed. If the user does remove that profile, it's automatically going to kind of initiate that selective wipe, so that the device will essentially become unmanaged from a sense that there'll be no corporate data or corporate apps left on that device. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's a kind of nice, kind of closing the loop there.
Yeah, no, and Apple's really, they continue to make really great strides as far as kind of keeping the consumer and the user experience first, but while paying attention to the enterprise needs. The other thing there you can do is, so those of you familiar with the current process to push apps in MAS 360s, you actually are going to publish that app in the catalog, and the end user is going to be notified that they have an app and directed to their catalog to go ahead and manually install that app. Well, with iOS 5, you can actually remotely push these apps. So it will require the end user to, they'll get a pop-up that says, your administrator has pushed you a new app, so-and-so, click OK to install. They'll click OK, the app will automatically install. There's no more kind of redirect to the App Store where they have to go in and click install and put in their password and go through that process. So it's a really, just a neat streamlining of the app distribution process, I think.
Well, one thing, I would mention, I gave a talk yesterday to some folks, and there are mainly IT folks in the room, and I think that was maybe the one thing for folks that are kind of new to MDM that is kind of something they got to get their head around, is the fact that, most IT folks are kind of familiar with that top-down model that's used with PCs and laptops where, basically the end user is actually locked out of the process of managing the device as much as possible. With mobile devices, really the model is kind of, upside down or different from that, right? I mean, the end user is literally a part of almost every management workflow related to the device.
Yep.
And, so I get the question a lot, well, can't we just push this down? And the answer is, or can't we just lock them out? And the answer is, well, no, you can't. Or, you can, but you need their involvement, right? There's not a way to do this without the end user being part of the process. So it's just kind of something that, isn't an issue, but there's certainly something that for IT folks that haven't managed mobile devices before, they just have to get their heads around. Yeah,
and it's important to note the end user is still part of the process, but their role is reduced significantly, with iOS 5 here. The other really neat thing, for those of you on the line who have familiarity with Apple's Volume Purchase Program, VPP, it's been enabled for enterprise. It allows you to kind of do bulk purchases of paid-for apps, distribute those to your end users and their devices. We've had support in MAS 360 for this for quite a while. But with iOS 5, the process for using VPP has been improved from a user experience standpoint. So, before, essentially you would push that app with the redemption code filled in, which would launch iTunes or the App Store, and the user would still have to do the direct install. But now it's a little different in the sense that it's going to be directly pushed down to the device. There's confirmation that the app's installed, so the administrator will know that the code worked and it was used when it was sent, as opposed to just kind of sitting there in an unused state. And it'll be smart enough to know that if you've got the same user in two devices, like I have my iPhone and my iPad, a second redemption code won't be needed for the iPad, right? It'll be smart enough to do that sync in terms of my iTunes account, which is just really nifty from a VPP standpoint to help kind of transition, the way we've traditionally done software deployment in the enterprise to this mobile device world that we live in now.
Hey, folks, we're going to open up our third poll here, so it's a little bit of a different kind of question. We're asking about whether you in your corporation have folks requesting iPhone 4Ss, and I read some stats the other day that, like as usual, it's just kind of incredible momentum. I read 1 million devices pre-ordered in the first 24 hours.
Some of that was the carriers, I'm sure. The newest carrier.
and Verizon, Sprint, and AT&T are already sold out of their initial, I guess, batch of devices, and so now folks go on a waiting list. So when you think Apple can't do it yet again, they do it yet again. Right? So,
and without the iPhone 5, nonetheless.
Yeah, so it really is phenomenal to watch, and how eager the market is for Apple's products.
Interesting poll results too. I mean, it looks like about 50-50, with a little more being on the side of having requests already for the iPhone 4S. I'm sure many of those are from upper management, which will then trickle down, much like we saw this entire industry take off, not so long ago. So those are the main features. I do want to just quickly review, what we said in the beginning in terms of, how we think they're going to impact the enterprise here in your environment. You mentioned it. You're already seeing upgrades. You're already seeing requests. I hope that some of the information we went over in terms of functionality made you agree that your users are going to see some benefit from some of the new features, and certainly the users will appreciate the over-the-air OS updates. Your IT team obviously is going to save a ton of time in terms of provisioning and activating these devices that might have been a very manual and cumbersome process with iTunes currently, which now can be done over the air. That app control, I really think, is going to become very fundamental to the way the enterprise does business in 2012 and beyond. I kind of always say, as a side point, that 2011 has been the year of the device. We want to manage the device. We need to see all the devices. And now we're seeing that transition for the end of the year into 2012 with our customer base. It's becoming all about the apps. How do I get the right apps to the right people so they can be as productive as possible while managing them effectively, securing the data, and just kind of creating that overall end-user experience. Yeah. And we think it's going to go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, it's apps and cloud, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's where kind of everything, is heading. Now, of course, Apple's bundled that all up into one great experience that includes the device and the user experience in it. But we all see the same thing.
And it's great validation of our business model being in the cloud as well, when a company like Apple is going to begin pushing it so much. And then obviously from a security team standpoint, I'm really curious, by the way, in terms of those security folks on the line, if you do want to send us emails after the fact with your thoughts on kind of iMessage and iCloud and some of the improvements around email security and sandboxing, and how you think that they impact your overall comfort level and things of that nature. I would personally be very interested in hearing that. I know we're having conversations on a daily basis, but rarely do I get an opportunity to ask that question of hundreds of people at the same time. So, general wrap-up, Joe, I'll pass back to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. I mean, we've all been, preparing for this for months here at FiberLink, right? We're obviously heavily involved in Apple's beta, programs, and have been working with iOS 5 and getting Mass 360 ready for its arrival for quite a while. So we're certainly thrilled that it's here and that our platform's up and ready for your iOS 5 devices and your iPhone 4Ss as soon as, I guess, tomorrow, maybe as early as tomorrow. First ones may show up in your environment. So if you're a customer, you can sleep easy tonight. You're ready. Couple things I think Chris mentioned already, but we're going to, there's so much to iOS 5. We're going to do 2 more webinars. On October 27th, we're going to do a deep dive on profile management, which a couple questions came in during the webinar here that we'll try to cover, but obviously get into much more detail then. And then on November 10th, iOS 5 app management. We'll cover that in depth as well. And Jim, if you would push the links out, you should have gotten some links already via chat where you can register for those webinars. And for those folks who managed to attend all 3 of the webinars, we're going to get one of you is going to be lucky enough to win an iPhone 4S. So not only will you learn a lot, but you might end up with a nice device as well. So if you can join us at the other 2 webinars, it'll be great. We promise you'll learn a lot. If you're interested in getting more information, or we can't answer a question that you've asked here today, you've got my contact info, my phone number, my email address, certainly since you got invited to the webinar. Feel free to reach out to me, and we'll certainly hook you up with the right folks here at FiberLink who can get your question answered. And obviously, we're all about the cloud, right? So we think history's on our side. We think we're on the right side of it. And, if you are still learning about MDM or you've tried some but haven't quite found what you were looking for yet, we'd obviously urge you to try MAS 360. We're completely cloud-based. And if you go to our website, mas360.com, and click on the Get Started link there, you can sign yourself up for a free trial and be up and running in a few minutes. We've got iOS 5 support today, and we'll obviously be showing that in more detail in the next 2 webinars. And our value to you as the person who has to manage and secure these things is that you can let us worry about a lot of the details of keeping your MDM infrastructure up and running, right? That's the value of the cloud. And one other thing I'll mention for those of you who are in the public sector space, I don't know if you saw our press release 2 weeks ago, but for those of you who are in the public sector space, you may be familiar with a regulatory code called FISMA, Federal Information Security Management Act. So it's a set of regs that most government agencies need to adhere to and follow. And we were actually pretty gratified here a couple weeks ago to learn that we had gotten a FISMA authority to operate, a FISMA ATO. And there are only 3 cloud-based vendors in the world right now that have that designation. One is a company called Google. The other is a company called Salesforce.com, and the third is FiberLink with MAS 360.
Not bad company.
No. So we're really happy about living in that neighborhood. It was, a long, rigorous process with various auditing agencies that, went through what we do and how we do it to achieve that. So we were thrilled about that. And, for those of you in the public sector space, you would know how important that is. GSA is a big customer of ours, and they sponsored us for that. And they were actually on an earlier webinar with us as well, describing how they work with us. So we think we've got a great story and a great solution that can really help any organization that's trying to figure out how to go mobile. So end of commercial. Chris and I are going to do our best here to take on some of the questions. And, I'll let Chris kind of moderate, and we'll get going.
All right, so I saw a few come in here. One of them early on was asking kind of what a key value sync was. That's a good question. So the best example I can give you there is something like username and password for email, settings for a particular app, things of that nature. So, that way when I go ahead and restore an app that maybe I had certain settings for, my email that's already pre-configured, my username and password, that key and value will come down as well. We had a really good question early on, actually, that I think was responded to directly, but I did want to talk about it for everyone. Someone asked if they have multiple devices with different accounts, will automatically syncing them will automatically syncing all these devices with the single iTunes account there allow for that data to be synced on all devices, So that's that family concern, if you will, where I'm the employee and I've got important data, but my son's iPod doesn't need that data when he's at school, right, in terms of iCloud. So we do have a post that we recently put up on our Master Center that talks a little bit about how to go ahead and create specific iCloud IDs that are not specific, that are different than your iTunes account, which can help quite a bit.
Yeah, we'll push that link out in a minute here to the chat panel if folks are interested in reading more about it.
That's great. Someone asked about upgrade to iOS 5 from the devices, and kind of if that was something that could be just globally pushed or done over the air. So good and bad news here. The bad news is no, it cannot be. The good news is this is the last one of these updates that can't be done over the air. So your end users will actually have to plug the device into iTunes, the recent version of iTunes, perform the update. The update's got a handful of steps to it. Actually, we're in the process of getting another post up on Master Center, which you can actually rob and duplicate and make your own for your enterprise environment. That'll have screenshots and whatnot that'll allow you to show the end user what the upgrade process will look like and set proper expectations. So you can expect to see that here in the near future. I hope you guys do frequent the Master Center forums. We try to keep up to date with tidbits and information like this that are applicable to your daily lives, as opposed to necessarily trying to sell anything as well. We had somebody ask what devices this is applicable for. So I think I did have that on this slide. I'll bring up real quick. You can see on the top. So iOS 5 will work on the iPhone 3GS and above, iPod Touch 3rd Gen and above, and all iPads.
iPads 1 and 2.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a 3 yet, unfortunately. That would give me another excuse to go spend money with Apple, right? Yeah, anything other than those versions would not be applicable for this particular update, and thus wouldn't benefit from the enhanced functionality. It is important to note, obviously, that they can continue to be managed like the devices that you're managing today. Let's see, what else do we have here? Someone asked about kind of any recommendations we have around backup to cloud or not, based on security concerns. And I actually can't really make a recommendation there. It's really all about your comfort level in your particular enterprise. So I do certainly, my only recommendation I guess I would make is that you do have those conversations with your security team. You review the full documentation and website about exactly what would get backed up, and you make those decisions. The other thing you can always do is if you wanted to start, with a certain policy in place and then make exceptions later, you could certainly do that based on the way we do policy management in Mass 360, and then that way you can kind of crawl, walk, run when it comes to cloud backups. But it really will depend on your industry, your users, the data that they have on those devices, and the overall comfort level of your security team. Obviously, it's one of those conversations you have to have in terms of a balance of end user satisfaction and productivity, as well as some of the security conversations that you might have. So somebody asked about, let's see what else we have here. Someone asked about HIPAA compliance. Obviously, that is quite important in the healthcare industry. We have a lot of different healthcare customers out there. So some of the things that I think are going to be important as part of iOS 5 to help you comply with HIPAA. Obviously, you already are going to be able to do things today like enforce passcode and wipe lost devices and ensure devices have a certain encryption level and take action if they don't. What you can also do today with that whole sandboxing of email, making sure that you can't move emails from one account to another, your corporate account to your personal. You can turn off screen capture. You can turn off the ability to send emails from third-party apps and things of that nature. So in general, iOS 5 does add some security enhancements that will be beneficial to customers dealing with highly regulated industries like healthcare, financial services, etc.
Yeah, and a kind of related question there, just to kind of make sure that that ability to kind of prevent email from being kind of moved out of that container. That's an inherent feature of iOS 5 that you can enable or disable through Maz 360, correct?
Right, right. Somebody asked, let's see this one here. They're asking about the app deployment piece and whether or not that applies to App Store or Marketplace apps or just homegrown enterprise apps. And it's a great question. So the streamlined nature actually will apply to both. This coming from this point forward. So obviously, those of you who are familiar with Maz 360's app management, we do have that really cool integration with the app marketplace, where you can do lookups on the fly in Maz 360, select the app, add it, distribute it, and that'll continue to work. But this way, now the streamlined functionality will be available. We had a question about Volume Purchase Program, VPP, and whether or not it's available outside the United States. So the answer today is no, unfortunately, but certainly that's something to take up and bring to the attention of your Apple rep, because I know that they most likely do have plans there to extend that functionality outside the U.S., and obviously the more inquiries they get, the more inclined they will be to accomplish that. We had a question about Siri. We actually didn't even talk about Siri. That really stole the thunder actually at the Apple announcement. It's a neat sounding tool. I'm excited to check it out. But we didn't talk about it today in terms of its applicability to the enterprise. But somebody did ask whether or not it would be made available for existing devices such as the iPad 2. So not that I know of. As far as I know, it's only going to be available on the new iPhone 4S and obviously any other hardware that comes up after that. Now, obviously subject to change from Apple if maybe they release a future version of iOS 5 that's compatible. Certainly you'll let us. We will be the first to let you know. Another question about iCloud. Is it a separate product or service from Apple? And it is included with all iOS 5 devices, and it can optionally be turned on and linked with your Apple account. So it's not something that you have to go out and provision or purchase necessarily. It is available with all your iOS 5 devices. You just will have to go ahead and activate it. Let's see, iMessage. Someone asked if it's going to work for only iOS devices or if it'll also work on Android and BlackBerry. It certainly kind of reminds me of kind of BBM from years ago. It's funny that actually sounds like years ago that we were using BlackBerries, right? But the answer is no. iMessage is specific to iOS 5 devices only. It will not work on your Android devices or your BlackBerry devices. However, certainly you can still send your SMS messages to those devices or users in your organization, like you do today. And obviously, the majority of our customers do have a very diverse range of devices that they're supporting in their environment, ranging from iOS to Android to BlackBerry, etc. Let's see. I think that was about all I saw here. If there's anything we didn't get to, we can certainly follow up here. My screen appears to be freezing up on the scroll button at the moment, but
okay, that's great. I appreciate your help. We got a ton of questions in, and obviously this is just the beginning. We're going to get into a lot more detail in the webinars in a couple of weeks. Over the next couple of weeks, I saw lots of folks enroll here, while we've been chatting. So obviously you've been clicking on it. So that's good. Thanks for that. Again, I would, visit the Master Center if you want to learn more. We post all kinds of stuff up there every day. It's not just technical stuff, although that's certainly a big component of it. It's not just stuff about Maz 360, although that's part of it, but there's also lots of information about how to use the devices better, interesting apps we found, fun things that we figured out how to do with devices, so you'll find all kinds of information up there. Feel free to reach out to Chris or I if you've got more information or got more questions, and we'll try to get those answered for you. And we'll see you again. Actually, next week we're doing a webinar with EchoWorks on data encryption.
Yep.
And Chris will be back for that one with Robbie Gorey from EchoWorks.
Yeah, it should be good.
So we'll be doing that next week. The week after that is our next iOS 5 webinar, and then 2 weeks after that will be the third of the iOS 5 webinars on app management. So thanks for your time today, folks, and look forward to seeing you next week and the week after. Take care.
Take care, everyone.